A war that's been 10 years now going, and it strips Detroit of $400 million each year or more, which is more than the city's budget deficit. So if we weren't spending this money, then we wouldn't have this budget deficit. We could pay off this budget deficit and still have some left over to work with. So this war has crippled the cities and the states in the whole of the USA. And there's no end in sight, so we cannot continue to ignore the impact of the war. Is the first thing that we need to point our finger towards. If I can give you some figures here from the Information Clearinghouse, which says this, quote, the budget for the 2011 fiscal year, which has to be voted by Congress by this October 1st, looks to be about $3 trillion, not counting the funds collected for Social Security. Since the Vietnam War, the government has included the Social Security Trust Fund in the budget as a way to make the cost of America's imperial military adventures seem smaller in comparison to the total cost of government. Meanwhile, the military share of the budget works out to be about $1.6 trillion. That figure includes the Pentagon budget request of $717 billion, plus an estimated $200 billion in supplemental funding called overseas contingency funding in euphemistic White House terms, to fund the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Some $40 billion or more in black box intelligence agency funding, $94 billion in non-DoD military spending that would include stuff like military activities funded through NASA, military spending by the State Department, etc., military-related activities within the Department of Homeland Security, $123 billion in veterans benefits and healthcare spending, and $400 billion in interest on debt raised to pay for prior wars and the standing military during peacetime, whatever that is. The 2011 military budget, by the way, is the largest in history, not just in actual dollars, but in inflation-adjusted dollars, exceeding even the spending in World War II when the nation was on an all-out war footing. Then it goes on to say the military spending in all its myriad forms works out to represent 53% of total U.S. federal spending for the average American. What all this means is that of every dollar you send to the IRS, 53 cents will be going to pay for blowing stuff up, fattening the wallets of colonels and admirals and generals, bloating the portfolios of investors in military industries, and of course funding the bonuses paid to executives for those companies, and the campaign chests and private expense accounts of the members of Congress who vote for these outlandish budgets. So your money will always be going to pay for the salaries and the bullets of those brave heroes over in Afghanistan who are executing kids, killing pregnant women, and then digging out the bullets and claiming they were stabbed by their families. And for the anti-personnel weapons that are creating legions of legless Afghani kids. And we're funding this. $400 million from Detroit a year.
We can't keep our schools
unquote. So, okay, another elephant in the room is our foreign economic hitman policies, like your brother was saying here, in NAFTA, that construct predatory loans to developing countries who cannot afford to pay the interest on these loans. Don't that sound familiar? It's happening to all of us, and it's happening to us on a small scale, even in our own households. So the war and its foreign policy has contributed to the death of millions and created new enemies who will continue to attack America and the American people who have no control of these wars. We have no control. Our elected officials are the ones who have control of the military spending and these unnecessary wars.
Very illuminating.
Another major impact on the residents of Detroit is the government deregulation of the banking industry and the predatory lending practices that targeted homeowners in Detroit, particularly African American and Latino communities, which is stripping the equity out of our homes and tossing the occupants out into the streets, causing urban blight, vandalism, and loss of property value, while the hedge fund investors on Wall Street profit from the defaults and the foreclosures. So these tactics is what led to the collapse of the housing and banking industry due to intentional fiscal irresponsibility, which brought this country to the brink of destruction, having to be bailed out by the victims of their predatory lending practices, while the top execs got their share for creating this crisis. So, right off the top. Then the credit crunch following caused a massive inability to purchase goods for all of us, which contributes to the closing of small business around our neighborhoods and makes it impossible for the college students to get by in college, and it makes it more difficult for ordinary working people like myself to manage expenses at home, and it drastically has changed our way of life here in this eroding city, and it also erodes the tax base and the purchasing power here in the Detroit area. So today, the people have to choose between their mortgage and getting groceries. This is what I'm experiencing, even as a city of Detroit worker. Now, I'm not from AFSCME. I'm not from a union. I'm a supervisor, okay? I'm in management. You know, I had to take a 10% pay cut. And also now, I also feel the same, yeah, I have a job, but I still feel impoverished because, you know, we pay all these things, we struggle to pay property taxes, and many other people have lost their jobs and can't pay their property taxes, and their property goes into foreclosure. So, though these natural gas companies report their profits, okay, they continue to raise our utility rates. If we're living in homes, we cannot pay these outlandish, you know, utility bills, which further erodes and you know, it causes us problems with paying our mortgage, and we end up in foreclosure. People, you know, have been using dangerous methods to heat their homes lately, which increases the death toll every winter for families with their homes catching on fire, and, you know, whole families dying of toxic fumes from these generators that they're trying to use to maybe heat their home or keep things going because their electricity has been turned off. So as you drive through Detroit, you can see the burnt out hulls, you know, of homes who have caught fire, or so they've been abandoned, or even the homeowner may have set the house on fire themselves because they're so deep in debt that this is how they're going to collect you know, it happens. I mean, hey, it crossed my mind at one time, even though, you know, I said, no, I don't think I want to go that route, you know, but it crossed my mind one time because I had to walk away from my house. And that was one thing that I thought, I'm going to walk away. I at least want to get paid for all the money that I put into it. And just, you know, I'll cook something and walk away. No, people do that. And then, boom, the house is on fire. And then, you know, they collect if they can get away with it. But this is desperation, okay, that has set in for people in Detroit, workers in Detroit, like me, okay? So, still more people are leaving Detroit because of the situation that they're in, and that's shrinking the property base. And the school millage, which is seriously affecting, you know, DPS, while Robert Bob is acting as an agent of destruction of the school system in Detroit to drive this last nail in the coffin of Detroit. So what is the purpose for laying off teachers and closing schools and leaving students to find a way to an overcrowded school further away from home? I don't get it. So how is this an improvement in the school system? Once the children in the community are being targeted, it should be time to stand up and fight. But I've seen some real fight backs going on in Detroit, and in particular, AFSCME Union is the only union that I see basically that's actually stood up to the mayor and took the mayor to court actually, and so they don't have a 10% pay cut imposed on them yet, and that's because the union has fought the powers that have the power to, even though they're trying to bust the union at this point, you know, the union has fought back, and the, you know, it's